see the path to the championship. I can see it.
Coca-Cola 600 belongs to Ryan Blaney.
Blaney's learned how to win over the last couple of months.
Blaney! Harmon! They spin behind him! It's going to be Blaney!
We're going to win this thing.
Ryan Blaney is going to win his way into the championship for...
You have to run a perfect race to get it.
Ryan Blaney is a NASCAR Cup Series champion!
What an unbelievable year. What an unbelievable playoffs for us.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 135 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media back in 2014. Each weekly episode of the show offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and special guest interviews all throughout the year. This week, we break down Team 12's run in the Food City 500 at Bristol Motor Speedway. Steve, I see you've made some safe travels back to Ohio from your adventure into Bristol, Tennessee. You watched some action-packed racing all throughout the weekend, from the Truck Series to just an indescribable event that was the Food City 500 back on the concrete at Bristol. No more dirt, but I have to say, I don't think anybody saw coming what we saw on Sunday. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that, Steve. But we do have a special guest coming on a little bit later that we're going to do an interview with. And can you talk about him a little bit?
Oh, yeah, we're going to be interviewing one of the hauler drivers, or the lead hauler driver for Team 12, Greg Sorber, who actually has been a follower of at least the Team Blaney Facebook page. I know for the longest time, but he's been with Penske for I don't want to say a long time, but quite a number of years, and it's going to be a great interview coming up. Some behind the scenes type things, and a little bit about what the hauler drivers do. He was teamed up with Justin back a couple of years ago, before Justin went to the Porsche program there. So great guy to talk to, and I can't wait to stick around, by the end of the episode, before the episode's up, and listen to what Greg has to talk about.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that for sure. We're going to go through our race recap and fantasy and a few other things, and then we'll get right to that interview with Greg. So back to Bristol. First time back there for you guys. I think you guys attempted to go to one of the dirt races at one point there that had some rain impacts the first season there. But what did you think we were there for the fall last year. Oh, that's true. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, we were there for Denny's other win last year. What do we think? Oh man.
What about the spring though? That's what's new. The spring race back on concrete.
Yeah,
how was Thunder Valley?
Bring back the dirt. I've always been for the dirt anyways. I don't know if you know that or not, but I think they should at least race somewhere on dirt once a year. Just like they do a road. They're doing a road course once a year. They do a couple different types of things like that. And they go all these different types of tracks, different disciplines. There's no reason they shouldn't be able to do dirt once a year somewhere. Maybe not there, maybe someplace where they can prepare for, be better prepared for a dirt race. But yeah, what we saw this weekend was, Saturday was great.
Right.
Saturday was fabulous. And Sunday, how did I put it? We did not get to see the best horse and jockey get to do what they do best. And that's the best way of putting it, because after Saturday, that's what I wanted to see on Sunday. Got to the tweet up, got to talk to Bob Jordan, and Bob walks right up to me and he goes, I picked your guy today, and I just, yeah, well, wow, he did. It happened again, didn't it? But the thing is that the main thing I said to them is I just don't want to see any kind of split strategies. And we had the ultimate in split strategies because of all the different things people had to do just to stay on the track. And, like I said, we'll talk about it, I guess, as we go along. But tire wear is one thing. Tires blowing up is another. But perspective, you and I talked about it before we actually got on here. Perspective for us is we're watching Ryan, and we saw what happened with qualifying and practice. And we think, boy, this should be a good day. And we watch from that perspective of what he's doing and how it goes for him. But as a whole, the racing was entertaining. But Ryan described it as like a plate race, and that's exactly what it was. It was we're going to restrict how fast we drive to make sure we don't wear out our tires. And because of that, there was a lot of 2 and 3 wide situations, and it made it, racy. What they do, 40 some lead changes, that never happened before there. So I mean,
54. It was a record.
Well, 54.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it did all those things, those elements that make it a good TV show. It's just knowing what we know from Saturday. It seemed like they were more prepared than anybody else for what they had, and for it to become something totally different is just kind of the thing that threw me, I guess, for the weekend.
So let's talk about Saturday, and this is really funny that this happens because, just a week ago, and I think even the week before that, I kept preaching that, you know what, for this team, for this championship winning team, who cares about qualifying? They didn't really get that many poles in their championship year last year. As long as they start in the top 15, I'm fine. Pole doesn't really mean that much. And what do they do? What do they do?
Yeah.
They go right out here and they have a one of their best Saturdays that they've had in the last few years.
Yeah, Group A practice there, and they go out and they talk about, like, if it doesn't feel right after like 10 laps, just sort of bring it in. But he goes past 25 laps, no problem, and fastest 10 lap, fastest 15, 20, 25, just fastest car. Watched him during the practice. We sat on the front stretch, and at one point during that run, even he had the 8 coming up behind him, and I don't know if the 8 had new tires on or was running a second set of tires at that point, but Ryan let him go just to kind of watch him, and then ran behind him for a while and stayed with him. So it's like, not only is he like just clicking off great laps, but then he's like, I'm going to watch somebody else's pretty fast too and see how he does. And, and then they get to qualifying, and he goes last in Group A, puts up the best time. And I'm like, here we go. Now it'll just be a matter of, does the sun do this and come out and cool, or go behind the clouds and cool it off for the right guy at the right time? And, it was a little bit, I don't want to say chilly, but it was only like 60 as a high, and there was clouds coming in and out. But he goes out 5th in that for the pole qualifying, puts up a time that's better than everybody to that point, and then holds on for the next 5 guys from Group B. He gets the pole. So, I mean, the Saturday itself was super, and
not only I'm a fan of qualifying. That was his 10th career pole, his first one since the spring of 2022, when they had multiple poles, that season. But they, like I said, they took a little bit of a step back on qualifying last year, but I just kept thinking, I'm like, oh, that's because, they're focused on race trim, being able to adjust the car properly throughout a race. But, and then they bring a rocket ship to Bristol. Mm-hmm. And I was just prepared for total domination on Sunday. And I think that's why I still don't really understand how I feel about how the race played out, because like you said, we got blinders on, and I literally had blinders on because, you were out at the track, and this was my first chance to actually try to mimic what the great Steve Mez does when he does his race reports. And I tried to take notes for you. And folks, I can tell you that it is very difficult to do. So I commend Steve, for the 1,000th time. He does such a great job, but I was just so narrow-minded on Sunday. I feel like I need to go watch the race back again. But I was prepared for total domination. And then also I told you that on Sunday morning, I'm also like the most nervous that I've been for a race in a while, because they did have a dominant car. And, while you try to preach optimism, there's always a little bit of me that's like, okay, what's gonna mess this day up?
Mm-hmm. And what, ultimately what ends up messing the day up is so strange too, because it's not somebody running into you. It's not some outside factor, I mean, it is an outside factor, but it's not something that, you saw coming. And, like my wife said, in perspective, it was relieving, and listening to the teardown and so forth. A lot of people really liked it. And she said it's definitely the first half of the race, first 2 stages, because at that point, not everybody was conserving tires. Some people were trying to make moves, and there is a point in time even where Ryan does it, where they go to the outside lane and just make some moves and show that. So there was some racing. There were certain points, though, beginning of the third stage, where everybody tried to just get to the low lane and try to conserve the tires, and it didn't quite look as racy. But the Gibbs cars definitely showed that they kind of had a good idea on how to do it. Once they got up there. So, we get to Sunday and we get stages of 125, 125, 250. 10 sets of tires. There's 9 sets of stickers, and then the one qualifying set, the scuffs. Fuel run of 170, 185 laps, which is, non-existent usually. They usually have to pit somewhere before then. And, it's really kind of cool because you start the day without this whole thing knowing what's going to happen with the tires. And you got, like you said here, you got Clint doing an interview from the booth, Ryan on the parade laps talking to Clint. He took the outside lane for the pole here. And, he initially, like you said here, he initially clears the 4 car, but does get a little bit loose and slips up the track a little bit, ends up giving up the lead a couple laps in, and reports it being a little tight. And at that point, you're like, well, okay, we're going to run the top 4 or 5 and, make sure we dial this thing in and get it going, and at some point by the end is where we want to be. And there's even a statement or two in there like that at some point where Tim will come on and say, hey, we're only at lap 1, whatever. And there's a lot more to go. So lap 19, he passes the 11, gets back up to 3rd there. And then with lap 23, we get the debris caution from the 24 hitting the wall. And they do come in and pit, and everybody's going to do 4 tires here because people are noticing that they're wearing pretty quick.
Almost everybody.
Yeah. Yes. And that's part of this too. Does like about a 10-second stop here. It's 10.077. You go in 4th, come out 9th, and that's exactly what you're saying here. A bunch of guys took 2 tires. That's how they moved in front of him. And I think this is somewhere where somebody took 0 tires.
Yeah, that's going to be the 45 car who
45 car.
got that fresh air or that clean air out front briefly.
Briefly. So they they restart there, and like I said, he's 2 to 3 tight there when he's landing. No front turn, loose on entry here. We get. Is that where we get the thing you're pitting on lap 26? So I think that's where 45 basically spins right away, pretty much there, right?
Yeah, it was just kind of we just didn't know. I don't think they knew at that point how much tires were going to mean, and he just kind of gets used up on the restart, spins. Looks like everything's going to be okay, but then the 71 car, after the race said that he got forced down into some marbles at the bottom of the track and couldn't get stopped, and the 71 kind of plows into the 45 and pretty much ruins both of their days. And the reason this is important is, Ryan and the 12 teams in the number 1 pit stall, 71 is pitting behind the 12, and the 71 having a bad day and it gets worse makes it really difficult actually for the 12 because they're having to come around guys. And Ryan, even I don't know if it's the next stop or whatever, actually, kind of complains a little bit or requests
get him off
them.
the track.
Yeah. Because he says the crew members are in his way because they're trying to fix the car, but he says they're kind of hanging out of their box, and he said, he's afraid of hitting one of them. So, but this is like a nuisance basically the rest of the way because and the other part is the 71 is in other incidents and they keep pitting before pit road is open. So they're already sitting there when the 12 comes in. So it's like, we had the number 1 stall, and honestly, the number 1 stall did mean a lot. They gained multiple positions all day long on pit road because of it. But I think they could have been even better if they didn't have to go around the 71 almost every time.
Yeah. So they do. It was only running a lap or 2 here, so they stay out up to 7th at that point, and they restart. And within a couple laps, gets to 6th and passes the 9 car, gets to 5th here. Lap 45 gets around the 34 up to 4th. Lap 49 to pass on the outside to get to 3rd. And that's the thing. A lot of these passes run the outside now because everybody's trying to trying to stay low to conserve the tires. Jonathan tells him on the radio that the only thing I can tell you is the low line is not tearing up the tires as much. So they're up to second here on lap 56 as he passed the 23 car. The 9 comes around him, goes back to third, and then by lap 70, he does pass all the way up to first place, passes the 9 car up to first. So we're back up first again, and a couple laps later, the 8 car actually comes by, and then we get this debris caution, I think somewhere around lap 72 or 73. And it's turning better here. He says that the back end is loose. The marbles are treacherous. They do come in second and pit and end up coming out second with a 9.81 stop. So it's pretty good there on 4 tires. Once again, Jonathan, their tires are pretty used up again. It's the right sides mainly, right rear for most of it.
I'm not sure when it happens, if it was this stop or maybe even before the first stop of the day, but Jamie Little has been featuring pit crews so far every race this year, and it was the 12 crew this year. I just actually, while we were about to record this, I shared it on our Twitter page. They have a video up, and each of the crew members kind of gets to introduce themselves. And she mentions here, which I didn't really realize, and she says that the 12 crew has, as of that beginning of the race at Bristol, had the fastest 4 tire stop average in the Cup Series this year in the first 4 races, which was kind of surprised me, because we've said before, obviously this is a championship winning crew, but they're not necessarily known for being that elite level that's busting off like 9s, and now there's some teams doing sub 9 second stops, but they've gotten to a really great groove of just being consistent. And I thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, I bet you that's why they had such a great 4 tire stop average, because they're just so consistent, where Denny's crew might hit an 8.99, but then like 2 stops later have like a 12-second stop because they mess something up. So I'd rather stay with that consistency, but it's really cool. That's one of the things that Fox has been trying to do this year, is kind of give some of those pit crews members a little bit more of a spotlight. So they did do this. I don't remember exactly when it happens, but just wanted to mention that.
You put it on Twitter? Is that where you put it at?
Yeah, I did just share that video from Jamie Little on X, I guess.
X, yes. Okay, so we'll look for that. Restart lap 80 here on the inside, spins the tires a little bit, but shakes out to second place. At lap 84, he passed the 11 up to first, and then lap 89 gets passed by the 11. So this is all these great passes that were happening, but once again, it's kind of like, because they're all kind of like backing up to each other. Lap 94 passed by the 8 car back to third, but about 15 laps later passes the 8 car, and we're back up to second. And at lap 1, what do you got here? 118 here. He tells them he's trying to nurse it. He can feel the right front. Seems like it's quartered already. At lap 120, the 11 gets the lead, and lap 121, 54 and the 5 pass. Ryan is P3, but by lap 123, he gets passed by the 6, 17, the 42, the 19, back to 7. But like I said, this is all, because his tires falling apart and theirs aren't, and maybe you got lucky in the run and didn't go as hard as you could have. But we get a caution right before the end of the stage here for the 8 spinning, and Ryan ends up P7. So there are stage points to be gained there in the first stage, which was good. And we go ahead and pit, coming in 4th, going out 7th here, and it's a 10.24 stop. So like you said, that first pit stall makes a big difference. Where we were sitting, we were on the backstretch at the end of turn 2, almost straight away from their pit stall. We just couldn't see it from where we were. It was straight away from us on the other side of the track. But although if we leaned over a little bit, we could see the guys coming around the front end of the car sometimes, depending on how deep Ryan went into the box. If he went pretty deep into the box, we could watch the guys going around the front of the car at least. So it was kind of cool. So we go ahead and restart lap 140 from the inside, and you have a note here: major tire conservation mode, and that's the truth.
Yeah, because I think that last run really showed people this isn't a fluke, and we actually kind of get into the cycle of this race where It works out perfectly. Like, NASCAR eventually does give them an extra set of tires, but they could get about, once they got past, 30 laps to like 45 laps was like the danger zone of where guys would start to feel problems happening. And we actually will just kind of keep seeing cautions happen on this cycle, saving a lot of people. Because it's like, oh, it's about time we were going to need some new tires, and then somebody does blow a tire here. But yeah, immediately here, it's like nobody wanted to play around anymore. The guys are cracking the throttle much more than they normally would, and it just turns into conservation. And the positions bounce around. Like even that last run, he passes all the way up to first, then he's back to second, then he goes back to fifth. Oh wait, now he's back up to third, and then all of a sudden, like you can tell when the tires just fall off a cliff because it mentioned, oh, like 5 guys just got past him like all at once. So it's basically the theme of the race, and it's I think this is where I was just kind of I was kind of upset with the day because I'm like, I'm realizing that he can't just use this dominant race car. They have to go into a totally different strategy, and it's all about conservation now and survival the rest of the way.
Yeah. On the restart lap 140, it shakes out to 11th. That tells you how far back, kind of like waiting and trying to get to a spot, trying to get to the low lane. Lap 170 is up to 9th. He gets passed by the 22. He's in 10th. And then at lap 176, we get a caution for the 47. He's in 12th at this point. And they're not happy about having to save tires. He says, this is the equivalent of fuel saving at Daytona. But said on the radio, and that's exactly what it ended up looking like. It's like we're all going to back up to each other to make sure that we don't waste our tires. You've got him pitting here in 12th, coming out 10th. That's he did gain a spot because of 54 also. So I got it as a 10.47 stop. Jonathan says no cords on this last set, but they're pretty worn. The 17 took 2 tires. And they go ahead and restart at lap 193, passing up to the 11th, gets passed by the 51. So now we're going to get players in this numbers of cars in this that are just totally insane. And it's nothing against them, but it's only because of the style of racing that they're going to have to do here. At lap 203, the 14, P14, the 99 almost crashed in front of him. So he got to back out because somebody got squirrely. Lap 207, the 54 ends up passing. We're back to 15, and the 54 is on scuffs, but he's not really saving the tires either. He's kind of going hard because they're getting near the end of a stage. And then we get a caution at lap 228 for the 8 car. You got that quote there. It's not worth saving. And you got if we just keep getting cautions, that's true. If you knew you could depend on a caution, you'd go crazy, right?
And that's what I was wondering when that was going to come up, because you see the 38, you see the 51. There's a lot of guys that are up front that aren't normally up front, and it's because they have just been like, you know what, we're going to throw caution to the wind here, and we're going to go hard because this is an opportunity. I mean, I'm guessing an opportunity for us to run up front. And Ryan gets a little frustrated by that because he's trying to be good. He's trying to conserve his stuff for the long run, but then he just keeps seeing these cautions come out anyway. So it's like that's when they have to start discussing strategy a little bit. Like, so should our strategy be to be a little bit more aggressive the rest of the way and just bank on the cautions happening to keep us up front as we get tires along the way?
Well, here's what's happening at this point in time. Something really interesting happens because you get this caution at lap 228. The end of the stage is 250. You're going to run so many laps. The restart's probably going to be at a certain point. And so they decide to go ahead and take 2 tires just to try to get some track position. They're going to take the right sides here. They go in 15th, come out 8th. Now that stop is a 4.071 second stop. Okay. So the stop is only to the right sides, and it's awesome. But coming to pit road, pretty sure it's when they come off the banking going down off of 2 into thing, he was speeding. So they discuss real quick as they're doing another lap or two. It's like, well, might as well come in and change the left sides. They were putting the scuffs on at this point anyway.
Yep.
And they go ahead and put the lefts on. That stop is only 4.67, but now they're tail end, right? So they're start near the back there. And not
only are they tail end here, but they actually get behind a little bit. I don't know if you remember this, but they they were still coming out of like 3 and 4
Yeah.
as the rest of the pack was taking the green. So I'm not sure what happened there. Like NASCAR, actually, the rest of the race had pretty much been really slow to get back racing, but it
Mhm.
seemed like in this specific caution they were really quick to do it. So
Yeah.
not that he was going to make it that much further up, but he was still coming out of turn 4 as everybody else was going into 1 and 2.
Yeah. So he's back to 25th at the end of stage 2. And I didn't hear this and you have it in the notes though. He asked if they could change the camber. But Johnson said they could, but they'd lose a lap. So that's interesting that, it would take a little because of how long it would take to do, but it would have definitely probably changed tire wear. It might have been something that might have been worth doing just to see you lose the lap and
Yeah,
then see if you can gain it back on not wearing your tires out as
right.
much. I don't know.
Yeah, like looking back on it, when it got down to the end of the race and what happens to him and how many laps he
Yeah.
goes down, I'm like, man, I wonder if it would have been worth it to
Yeah.
even go down like 2 laps to fix the setup of the car, because that's something that was being discussed throughout this race. Was okay, the teams know what's happening, the drivers are going to adjust what they can adjust, the crew chiefs will adjust what they can adjust, which is mostly air pressure.
Yeah.
And people were saying, if they knew that the tire was going to be like this, they would have come to the racetrack with completely different setups. And camber is a
Yeah.
big factor in that. That's something that, like, if they're aggressive on camber, and we remember this back from the beginning of the next gen car when there's a lot of aggressive camber setups and air pressure setups and tires were exploding. Um, Camber is a big factor, especially when it comes into like right front tire wear. So I feel like if they were to come back in the fall with the same setup with the resin and whatever the heck happened, that would be one of the setup adjustments that would definitely be changed. So, but it was interesting, they're just trying to figure out, Ryan's doing the best that he can do in the car, brake bias, the way he's, entering a corner, the way he's, how much throttle he's using, and Jonathan's doing the best he can on the box, but you could like their minds were just, going in circles like all race long, trying to figure out what they can do to solve this problem. So,
Yeah. Now this pit stop here at the break, in 20, what you got 25th here, but comes out 23rd. So it was a 10.044 stop here. NASCAR also confirms that they're giving them an extra set of tires because they weren't going to make it to the end with all the stops they're going to have to. Weren't going to have enough tires to make it. Restarting at lap 265 here. And he decides to go ahead and move here, basically on the outside. That's next bunch of laps because he started 23rd, and by lap 285 up to 18th, lap 290 passes the 48 to 17th, lap 296 passes 17 up to 16th, 298 passes the 41 up to 15th, lap 300 passes the 43 up to 14th, 301 passes the 23 up to 13th, 303 passes the 1 up to 12th, 305, we passed the 15 up to 11th. Now, the only danger to this is it's working, doing it all on the outside and, using your tires. But at lap 310, we get a caution for the 4 car spinning right out, right in front of us, actually. Luckily, we missed it. So this puts us all the way up to 9th at that point because we're passing somebody, plus they were somebody in front of us, gained 2 spots. And it gives us a chance to go ahead and get more tires, and so it couldn't have happened at a better time.
Yeah, it's exactly what they were discussing. It's like, let's be, should we just be aggressive because we might catch a caution? And here we go. Yeah, 23rd to 9th in that run, and it was pretty exciting to watch that because I was, talking to the folks in Discord. I'm like, we're making some 3-wide moves right now. And it reminded me of like what the 54 car did, on the scuff tires earlier in the race. So yeah, that was the point where Ryan, like, I'm not going to mess around here in the back. Let's just see what we could do. And that's what it reminds you again. Like, I know it was him being aggressive too, but he also couldn't do that if the balance on the car wasn't good. So like another reminder, I'm like, man, they had such a good car.
Good car, really good car to be able to do all that. So we got 316 was the pit stop here. In 9th, out 8th here, a 9.97 stop. Jonathan says there's no cording, at least on these tires. Restarting lap 323. So, there's still 170 some laps to go here, and you've worked your way back up to the top 10. So it's, we get up to 10th here at lap 323, passing the 51. At lap 340, passes two cars. It goes from 11th to 9th. At lap 356, passes the 34 up to 8th. At lap 360, passes the 51 up to 7th. At lap 365, passes the 6 up to 6th. And then we get a caution, and we're in 6th here. And let's see here, 360. So this is the pit stop at lap 373. In 6th, out 6th. Larson had a penalty. Jonathan says there's a little bit of cording. We're looking at a 10.01 stop. So, we're all in good shape here for the rest of the race. Just depends on how long the tires are going to hold on, and they get this set here. Something happens with this set of tires, and they restart, they shape out to about P7. And then from lap 387 to, lap 404, they lose all the way back to 24th place. And it's just one car after another coming around him. There was somewhere in there where he got up with the 34. He's racing hard with the 34, and I think this is part of it. He used up a lot of tire, I think, racing with the 34 car, trying to get around him. 34 is racing him really hard. And then it just kind of like falls off a cliff. And there's a point in time, I think the one car ends up being part of it. And everybody's like, oh, the one car hit him. And it's like, well, no. Ryan was basically a moving chicane. Listening to Tim spot for him at this point, he was really just trying to tell him what was coming from what direction, because Ryan really, really had a lot of trouble with the tires. And it may have been ready to blow, and he was just trying to keep it from happening, and he ends up a lap down by lap 326 here, so up in the 25th. I'm sorry, 426, all the way to the 25th. And they with 65 to go, they go ahead and pit. This is the longer stop. This is, but it doesn't really matter because they're, already a lap down and they end up going 4 laps down at this point. Now, the thing is it kind of like let a green flag cycle, if I'm not mistaken. So, they're going to get 1 or 2 of those laps back just based on the fact that, somebody else is going to have to pit. But this is how good the fresh tires were. Within a couple laps, he passed the 11 leading. He got one of his laps back on the track. So he was only 3 down. At lap 52, he's back to 2 laps down. And then by lap 47, he's an 18th and 1 lap down. So getting the fresher tires and being able to go ahead and use them the way he did, he got some of that time back pretty quick because they were running 17 and 18 second laps when, on those older tires trying to go slow. And when you put a fresh set on, you can run a 15 or 16 second lap. You make up a lot of ground pretty quick. So with 34 to go, he's up to 17th here. 22 to go, he passes the 1. He gets the 16th. With 5 to go, he's 2 laps down in 16th. Then he gets passed by the 1 to 17th. But then within a lap or 2, he passes the 51 and he finished 16th. The 11 wins. The Gibbs cars end up in the front most of the day. Yeah, they may have had something with their setup that was a little different too, where their tire wear may have not have been as bad. They still backed up to the field. That's the funny part is, sure, they were up front, but they were up front by default. There were a lot of guys that didn't want to be up front, because it's easier to be in 5th place and gauge how slow everybody's going than it is to be the leader and try and back off, So if you could be 5th, 6th, 7th place and kind of run slow because everybody in front of you is slow, that's good. You didn't want to be the guy having the lead because sooner or later you're going to back up to somebody. Somebody's going to take the gamble and use their tires up. So, I once again, you put on X there. I can't wait to hear what I had to say. And I don't know whether to go on a rant or not.
That's what I mean. I don't know. I don't know how to feel, and I wasn't sure how you were going to feel. I'm like, Steve might either be on like the angry end. I feel like you were going to be on the extremes. I didn't know if you'd be caught in the middle or not. So
yeah, I mean, there's just so much disappointment as to what I said earlier. The horse and the jockey were probably the best ones of the weekend, and they didn't get a chance to show it in the way you'd normally show it, and that is go out and just run a race and make everybody follow you all day long and be the quickest car. I mean, Martinsville last year is a great example of that. They knew from the drop of the green flag at Martinsville that they had the best car. They made it even better as the race went on, and they just drove up through people and lapped, half the field. And that's what I was waiting to see. I was waiting to see how's this car handling traffic. how's this car handle when they get to the tail end of the field and they got to go around guys, because that's usually what Bristol ends up being after a while. You get this cycle of, if you get 50 or 60 laps in a run up Bristol, that's what you get. The 30th place and the 28th place car, you're lapping them, and how well you get around them, and how quick you get around them compared to the guy who's running second. And do you gap that guy a little bit so you give yourself some time, or, does somebody battle you kind of hard because you're lapping them? Those are the types of things I was looking forward to on Sunday, and it never really materialized. I mean, guys end up losing laps because their tires got corded and they were trying to keep it from blowing. And, the top 25 or 30 cars were all running within a couple seconds of each other. That was really weird, because usually you see this at Bristol, you see it get spread out. You see it get where they're all over the track, all race long and live. It's awesome to watch that, and instead we watched like a swarm going around the track because nobody really wanted to use their tires up trying to go around somebody, because in 3 laps from now you could blow. And it was just, that was the part that was just rough for me. I couldn't, was the action good because of that? Yes, it was. That's the part that's, the Jeff Cluck pole was, up in the 90s or whatever. It didn't make it to 90, I don't think, but it should have been, because that's what people, really, some of the people voted against it were probably the people that didn't want to see Denny winning. That's what came down to not being a good race to some people. But guys who were really good at tire conservation, made it up there. Older drivers, or drivers who drive a lot of late model type stuff and things where and done it recently too. Where there were tire fall off is the most important thing. So that was the tough part of it. That's the part I, would rant about, is it's just that I didn't get to see the potential of what could have been under a normal race there,
Yeah, I made a comment in our chat, like halfway through the race, and I said, I bet for the more casual race fan that's at Bristol, that doesn't have a headset on and doesn't really know everything and why it's happening, probably thinks this was the most amazing race they'd ever seen there before. Mm-hmm. And I kind of equated it to, we've gone to Talladega the last couple of years, and the next gen car at Talladega, the race from the stands looks amazing because these guys are going 3 wide. That most outside lane, which is the guys that are pushing it, are making huge moves, getting to the front. Stands are going crazy, but then, we'll come back and do our race recap and be like, yeah, all day long, Ryan just, complained about having to save fuel. And you'll hear all the other podcasts, remind everybody that, these races look amazing but it's really just a mirage because they're just saving fuel. Ryan gets out of his car at Bristol and, he goes to the media scrum. And that's kind of the first thing that he says, that, this felt a lot like a Daytona, Talladega fuel mileage race, to where they couldn't really race. They just had to run around and conserve tires all race. And I think he felt kind of the same way. Knew he had an amazing car, a ton of speed, and just didn't have the opportunity to show that because this race turned into something completely different than it's ever been. So, I ran to X and other social media immediately after just to see, because I honestly thought it was going to be really polarizing. The entire Discord, Team Blaney Discord chat, like basically wanted to set, Bristol on fire and start over again. But I think, again, that's because we had these blinders on. We're only thinking about the 12 team. We're only thinking about them being on the pole and being the fastest, and this ruined our race. I go, catching up on social media. Dell Jr. all race long is just being an evangelist for this. He loves it. Best thing he's ever seen. Hopes they don't change anything. Doesn't want Goodyear to budge on this. Thought it was fantastic. He's commenting and replying and retweeting as many things as he possibly can. Tons, and I mentioned this to be specific, a lot of drivers that were not in the race loved it. Like the Parker Klingermans and the Tommy Joe Martins and lots of, guys from other series, retired drivers. Casey Kane chimes in. They all loved it. Finally, it's something that's back in the driver's hand. Maybe it's a little bit to the extreme, but we'd rather it be that way than not. Chase Briscoe, lots of other drivers that were in the race, Josh Berry, who comes from that late model background, all seem to really like it, though they kind of said the same thing. They're on the edge. But guys like Ryan, guys like Kyle Larson, kind of said, it was okay. It was, Larson basically kind of said the same stuff that Ryan did. Like, I just wouldn't want to race like this. I wouldn't want this to be the race that happens here. So the Jeff Gluck poll started out in the 90s and settled out around high 80s, I think, which, still pretty good for one of those polls that says a majority, at least of the echo chamber of social media, like the race. Tons of industry people like the race. NASCAR, Steve Probst came out and thought it was one of the best short track races we've seen in a long time. 54 lead changes, the most on record ever at Bristol. I think if you have a NASCAR executive coming out and saying something like that, that they don't see this as any sort of debacle or anything like that Indianapolis race that happened a long time ago that people brought up. So I feel like I need to go back and watch the race again and not be focused only on that. I was just going to ask you, like when you had the opportunity to just take it all in, did it you kind of said it did seem a little exciting. We've talked this out and I still don't know how to feel.
It's interesting because I always say to follow Ryan's lead too, when he gets out of the car and they interview him and he does little, his little thing that he puts out on Mondays. And it's hard because it seems like they were unprepared for the situation because, okay, he gets out and says something about, I don't believe that wasn't the same tire. Other people have said, well, the temperature was different and maybe the track treatment helped cause it. But there was more marbling on the track than they were laying rubber down. And that was part of why it was destroying the tires quicker. And it just seems to me like something was off. And although all the teams adjust, it just would have been something they could have prepared for a little more or known about what's going to happen, but it seemed like everybody was caught off guard to some extent. And how you adapted to it was, part of it. But, like I said, Ryan kind of made it sound like they were, they should have tested this tire, and this tire was not the tire that was, here last year or, something. So it just, man, that's the part that's just so, because they always seem to be so prepared for every situation. That's the thing.
Yep.
Jonathan does a really good job of making sure that something goofy does happen, that they've got a plan. They've done it before. They've talked about it or have something ready. So that's the part that just kind of like, I don't know. Some people, like I said, the Gibbs cars ran pretty good and they seem to be up front. On the other hand, like I said, you get to 5th or 6th place, and you probably want to sit there for a while to make sure your tires last the run. And maybe those guys out front lose their tires by the end of the run, so there was just a lot of that. I don't know if that's good racing or not. They make it sound like it was, but I don't know.
I think we're in the same boat. The last thing I'll say on it is I think this is in the right direction. 100% agree. I think it needs dialed back about 50%. This is my concern. I don't know that they're going to figure out why. Because Goodyear, like you said, Goodyear is saying this is the exact same compound we ran at the night race. The only difference here is the resin, and Denny Hamlin has mentioned it may be the track temperature because we're in March. It was a little bit cooler there, even though the last race was a night race. It was in the 70s. It was the track temps were like in the 60s. So
that's what
I just don't think they're going to be able to figure it out. And it's like maybe they won't be able to catch on to what actually did it. So, man, I just don't know. I think maybe this will be a unicorn. This will be a one time that it happens. Maybe they can learn something, but unfortunately, like you said, the 12 team didn't be able to really show what kind of a dominant car they had because the cards they were dealt. So, unfortunately, went into this race as the points leader. But Ryan comes out of it after that 16th place finish, dropping 3 positions in the point standings. But the good news is he's only 8 points back of the leaders. Kyle Larson's in first, and Martin Truex Jr. is in second, technically, though they are tied for points. Third is Ty Gibbs, who's having a phenomenal year so far in his sophomore campaign. Ryan's fourth, Hamlin is fifth, Chase Elliott is sixth, Ross Chastain is 7th. Christopher Bell is in 8th. Tyler Reddick, despite his troubles on Sundays, in the 9th position. And rounding out the top 10 is William Byron, another driver that had some struggles there at Bristol really early on in that race. So Byron's in 10th, 49 points back of the leader. Again, Ryan is in the 4th position, 8 points back of the leader. Let's take a look at our Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League and give you a recap of the week that was in fantasy racing. I totally didn't pay attention to what was going on in there. I think I said I was so dumbfounded by what was happening in the race. I wasn't paying too much attention to everything else that was going on around me, but I'll give you an idea of what my starters were in this race. So started Denny Hamlin, the eventual race winner here, got me 44 points. Started Ryan Blaney, got me 26 points. Michael McDowell got me 26 points. Truex got me 44 points. Kyle Busch had a horrible day, but ran up front at times, only got me 12 points. And Logano is who I had in the garage, got me 23 total points. So maybe I would have swapped Logano and Busch, but everyone in my lineup ran up front at some point during the day. They just, not everybody could hang up there except for Truex and Hamlin. So luckily I had them, or it would have been a really bad day. Featured matchup, I picked Elliott over Buescher. That was wrong by one position. I picked McDowell over Priest. That was right. I picked Bell over Keselowski. That was wrong. I picked Barry over Hocevar. That was right. So I kind of split the difference there. 2 out of 4 on that. I ended up 47th on the weekend, 172 points earned. Let's take a look at your lineup.
Yeah, I had Ryan. I had Denny. So I had Denny. That was good. I had Logano. He got some stage points at least at one stage. I had Chase Elliott, who scored pretty decent with top 10, and then Briscoe. And I had Bubba Wallace in the garage. Because he qualified pretty well, and I thought, no way of swapping out anybody at the track. Wi-Fi is pretty much non-existent there. They have something, but it doesn't show up depending on where you're sitting, and it just there was no way even if I wanted to make a move, I could have. I had Chase Elliott, Buescher beat him. I had Priest, McDowell beat him. I had Bell, and Keselowski beat him. And then I did have Josh Berry. Who beat Hocevar. So, I don't know, what's that? 156 60, points. Yeah, it was
69th.
Yeah, and I lost in my own household.
What is the other team's name? I don't even know. I didn't even ask.
She out here. I'm looking now because it should be C. I think it's just C Mez. Oh wait a minute, she did not. No, she did not end up beating. She was beating me at one point.
Gotcha.
The wife ended up with 160. I have here. I had 100 and.
I see her. Yeah, 76th position, 146 points.
146. Yeah, so I beat her by 10 or 12 there, and what are you going to do? I mean,
all right. So you ended up 69th. I ended up 47th. Mm-hmm. We could talk about some folks that had much better days than us.
Yes,
so we'll go through our top 10.
I like the people who knew what they were doing with their fantasy teams.
So Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League, the top 10 in points earned at Bristol Motor Speedway for the spring race on concrete. In 10th, Rochi 12, 207 points. In 9th, NASCAR Mom 427, 213. Tied for 7th, we have Alyssa C. and Go 12 Go, 214 points earned. Tied for 5th, Team Penske and hashtag LGM, 224 points. Three-way tie for 2nd, Montana 12 fan, Dusty Hawk 12, and Blaney the Goat. Three-way tie for 2nd, 230 points earned, and leading the way this weekend for the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League at Bristol, Skeet 22 in the first position, 239 points earned. Overall standings, I'm going to go down and try and find myself here. 44th position. It's like, man, every year, this is basically my sweet spot is in the 40s. 44th position overall, Team Blaney host Adam, 827 points. On the plus side, how the mighty have fallen. You have dropped below me. Last week, you were multiple positions ahead of me, so hallelujah. My prayers are answered. 46th position, Mez 12, 825 points. So I've got a commanding 2-point lead over your team heading into to next weekend's race. So let's take a look at the top 10, though. On the overall standings, 10th, Blaney or Bust, 908 points. U.S. Calvin in 9th, 909 points. 8th is Go 12 Go, 912. 7th is Dr. Race Chaser, 917 points. And 6th is Factory of Sadness 6, 918 points. 5th is Montana 12 Fan, 925. 4th is Blaneyac 10, 936. And 3rd is Skeet 22, 940. 2nd is Penske Fan 24 at 948. And leading the way in first position, Alyssa C, 961 points to give her number 1 in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. So congratulations to those folks that had good weekends. As always, Steve and I have some work to do when it comes to our lineups. And that brings us to this weekend's race in Austin, Texas. Give you the NASCAR on TV report for Circuit of the Americas. It's an action-packed Saturday. 10 a.m. Eastern time, you have NASCAR Cup Series practice at COTA on FS1. So it's going to, or on FS2. So practice is going to start on FS2, be there for a half hour. So fingers crossed that Ryan's in Group B. I'm not sure yet. Bob might already have a post out that tells us that. But if not, we're going to get a little bit of a delay there. 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, a half hour later, NASCAR Cup Series practice and qualifying at COTA on FS1. So that shift happens from 10 a.m. on FS2 to 10:30 a.m. We go to FS1 for the rest of the day. 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Expel 225 at COTA on FS1. And then 5 p.m. Eastern time, you have the NASCAR Xfinity Series Focused Health 250 at Circuit of the Americas, also on FS1. So from 10 a.m. all the way till, probably around 7:30 or so, we have NASCAR road course racing to keep you busy all day long on Saturday. Sunday, March 24th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, we have the NASCAR Cup Series Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas, and that is going to be on Fox. So take a look at Ryan Blaney's stats over the years at Circuit of the Americas. We've only made 3 stops there so far. He has 1 pole position there, an average start of 16th, average finish of 14.7, just 1 top 10, and that comes in the race in 2022 when he finished 6th. So he has finishes of 17th in 2021, 6th in 2022, and 21st last year. This is one of those races, though, where there's been some interesting things that have happened there. I believe the first year was like a deluge of rain. Second year sat on the pole, had a pretty good run, finished 6th. Last year is one of those years where that turn 1 really came into play, and a lot of guys were getting used up there. So 21st position in last year's race. And, outside of, I think, maybe his run at Charlotte in the fall, road course racing, or maybe it was Watkins Glen, one of the two. Road course racing for the Penske cars was not super stellar in 2023. So I'm hoping that they've figured something out in the off season that can give them a little bit more of a leg up when it comes to road course racing in 2024. Ryan's overall stats, and this is, again, because of the finishes the last couple of years in the next gen car, it's climbed up here a little bit, but his average finish on road course tracks in the NASCAR Cup Series is at 14.3. So it's still pretty good, but it actually was lower a couple of years ago. So we've been kind of tracking that from year to year. One thing to note, and you'll see this on X, I believe I shared it. If you follow any of the other NASCAR media folks, they have a new schematic out for the restart zone at COTA. And the idea here, like they have at a lot of road courses in the last year, they've moved the restart zone back. It was a little bit closer to the start finish line there on that really long straightaway before they hit the hill and go up into that very dramatic left-hand turn. So they've pulled it back all the way, basically just out of the exit of turn 20. So that way, a good chunk of the field is still going to be coming around the bend as the leaders get to the Geico restart zone and take their green flag. The idea there is to try to get the cars to be a little bit more spread out when they get up into that first turn. While it has been exciting, it has been dramatic, we've seen the 12 car and lots of other really good cars get used up in that first turn, and it's probably one of Steve's most hated turns in all of NASCAR Cup Series racing, I'd have to say. Do you agree?
Yeah, this happened. They made this move with Indianapolis last year, and it totally changed things because everybody going up that hill and all together as close as they were. And, if you're up in the front and you're trying to brake correctly, like you're supposed to make that turn, but then the next 5 guys behind you decided, I'm going to send it and see who bounces off me first. It just made for a very ugly situation. We'd rather see guys use their skills as far as braking and turning. And, if you can get underneath somebody, you do it without hitting them, and it just became a lot of like, oh, we're going to go 6 wide and I'm going to be the guy underneath. So I should be in good shape. And it was just way too much of that. So hopefully this first time they have to do it, hopefully it's not very often. And that's another thing, because they would wad them up there and it might cause another caution. They might have to have another restart just because of what happened in that turn. Whereas a lot of times on a road course, if 1 or 2 guys spin out and, they get it going again, they don't have a caution. So hopefully we see actually a lot of green flag racing and, some strategies on who pits when, before the stage or after the stage. And, so that's what we really want to see. And, like you said, Ryan had a pole there, so I really can't. I'm kind of looking forward to see how his practice and qualifying goes.
Worth mentioning, this was one of the races last year. They actually started the season off on road courses not having stage breaks, but they have reinstituted stage breaks for all of 2024. I think they did it with a couple of road course races to go last year, at least for the Charlotte road course for sure. They had stage breaks there. So now something like fans and drivers and teams all kind of wanted stage breaks to go away. Then we ended up having, a couple marathon races that were done really, really fast. And it kind of ended up being the opposite of maybe what we thought would happen with strategies and stuff. Like guys ended up really just, throwing the points away anyway and just following the strategies they would have if the stages had happened. So they're bringing them back, just to bunch the fields back up again. So it's not, strung out. So stage breaks are back at COTA in 2024. The restart zone is pushed back in an effort to, get the field strung out a little bit more going into the turn. Like I said, I don't know. I'm hoping for just a solid top 10 day. I don't expect the 12th car to go out and win this race just because of the road course package they've been bringing to the track in 2023 was definitely not the fastest on track. But, things are definitely cyclical in the NASCAR Cup Series, and this could be a year where Penske comes out. They did a lot of their homework over the offseason, and they come out strong, and that's the optimism I'm going to have. But I really just want a solid top 10, keep, Ryan within sight of the points lead, get some stage points, and, keep building on, another championship season. We just talked about fantasy, and I want to go through some drivers here that maybe we're going to want to put on our fantasy lineups, or at least, keep watch of when it comes to this race at COTA. And I'm actually going to list off winners from all 3 series here, just because we've only made these 3 visits here to this racetrack in the first place. In the Cup Series, Chase Elliott won the first race there in 2021. That was rain shortened. Ross Chastain kind of dramatically won the second race there in 2022. And Tyler Reddick had a pretty dominant car last year in 2023 and went on to victory there. In the Xfinity Series, Kyle Busch has a win there in the inaugural race. And then AJ Allmendinger has picked up wins the last 2 seasons there. I think AJ is going to be in the field this week, probably in a Kaulig racing car. In the truck series, again, Todd Gilliland picked it up in that 36 truck or that 38 truck for front row initially. And then Zane Smith won back-to-back the last 2 years. All these guys that I've mentioned are all going to be in this Cup Series race that all have visited victory lane there already. While some of it's in different cars, AJ was a part of that dramatic finish when Ross Chastain won the race there too. AJ's won a road course race in each of the last couple of years in the Cup Series at Indianapolis and then also at Charlotte. So, if he's in a decently prepared Kaulig car, he's probably somebody you're going to want to look at to have in your fantasy lineup. I don't know how it impacts when they don't run for points, though. I think you still get all the stage points and everything for fantasy, right? I think we always question that, but take a look at AJ. Maybe this is the week Zane Smith gets some redemption, right? I mean, something has to go right for this guy at some point.
Yeah. I mean, he's won there twice. I saw him at Mid-Ohio finish second in the truck. So, yeah, he's a pretty good road course racer. Let's see what practice does, mind you, how much pace they have. But, yeah, he's definitely one you want to look at. And then you got a couple guys coming from outside in. Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be there this weekend. And let's see, the 16 for Kaulig. And then the 50, it's the 50 car for 2311 Racing. Kamui Kobayashi. Hopefully I got that right.
I think it's Kamui Kobayashi.
Kamui. Okay, so the first part, I had Kobayashi right. Is driving the 50 car for 2311 Racing. So you got a couple guys from outside the series. Timmy Hill in the 66 also coming in. So let's see what some ringers do. Van Gisbergen will be really interesting because this is not a street course; it's a road course. But he showed what he could do last year.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't have the lineup in front of me or the entry list. So maybe if SVG is in the 16, maybe Almedinger's not. Maybe this isn't one of his races.
13. He's in the 13.
So they're getting a third car. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, not great for us because he could steal a victory or a position from the 12. But good for them. We'll see what these guys can put up there. And SVG, I think this will be his third race in the Cup Series. He won that first one at the Chicago Street Course. So let's see if he can back it up. And he's actually run a version of COTA when the supercars came over here to the U.S. and ran some races, but I guess it was a truncated version of that track. So he is familiar with parts of this track, but he's going to be tackling a whole new thing when it comes to the NASCAR Cup Series racing there in the next gen car. So again, if you want to tune in this weekend for the races at Circuit of the Americas, specifically the Cup Series, 10 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, March 23rd, you can start practice off on FS2. It moves over to FS1 at 10:30 a.m. You can watch the rest of practice and qualifying. And then Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas. You can watch that on the Fox network.
Yeah. Now for everybody who's been waiting around, now's our great interview with Greg Sorber, hauler driver for Team 12. Once again, hopefully you've stuck around this far into the podcast. This is a great interview and some great stuff shared here.
We'd like to welcome Team 12 crew member Greg Sorber to the Team Blaney podcast. Greg is a multi-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, a Daytona 500 winner, and he serves as the lead hauler driver for Ryan Blaney's number 12 Ford Mustang. Greg, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Appreciate it.
So you are another one in a series of interviews that we've been doing with members of the crew. We'd like to get everybody's backstory, talk about how they got into racing. You specifically have a really unique job in being a hauler driver. I know we've talked to one of Ryan's hauler drivers in the past, but it's always great to get a new perspective from somebody new as we go year to year. But first off, man, I read up a little bit about your backstory and, thinking about a hauler driver, a transport driver, we know that some kind of get into it because that's something that they're already doing. But Greg, you come from a racing background, and can you kind of talk about that, how you got into racing? And I understand it was kind of with a family team.
Yeah. We were, just graduated high school. Family, my cousin, uncle owned a car dealership that I was working at. And we were running NASCAR late models in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And which we're from Northeast Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, and doing really well. And some gentleman wandered into the car dealership one day and mentioned to my uncle, "Hey, NASCAR's starting this truck series where they're going to race pickup trucks. It's going to be the Craftsman Truck Series." Well, the next thing you knew, we were buying parts and pieces, and we bought an existing truck from Bobby Gerhart, who is an ARCA racing legend, who it wasn't his cup of tea. So we bought everything that he had in 1996, and I think we were at our first race in 97 at I-70 Speedway in Kansas. And I wasn't driving then, wasn't old enough to drive then. But my cousin told me, I always had a spot on the team, which was kind of, I got heckled for that a lot because I was always you must be related. Well, I'm related, but I'm good at what I do too. But he told me that I was a good mechanic, but I just wasn't fast enough. I wasn't confident enough in my skill. And if I wanted to maintain a spot on the team, that I needed to find something else to do. So I already drove a car carrier for the family dealership. We transported a lot of cars. So doing that, once I was old enough to do it. And it's like, well, if I'm driving a truck now, I might as well drive the family hauler. So did that until we went cup racing. My uncle bought all the assets from Roger Penske of the old 77 Kodak car, the old Penske Cranifus racing.
Yeah.
And we brought all that equipment back to Pennsylvania. And in the process, I think my uncle told me it was our 75th year in the automotive sales business by the race team almost bankrupting the car dealership. So he was going to Daytona to give it one last shot, and didn't work out. And he closed the doors, and him and my cousin offered me a chance to come back and work at the dealership. And it's like, man, we've been racing for almost 10 years now. I've met a lot of people. I know a lot of people. I really like this deal. And I said, I think I'm going to make a go of it on my own. And I left my wife and my kids at home, and I moved to Martinsville, Virginia. And I went to work for Jim Harris. I already had a hard card, so it was easy to go to races and put my resume out there with all these people. And I met Jim Harris's people at Dover Speedway, and they had a falling out with their driver. And the next thing you know, I was driving the number 59 hauler for Jim Harris's truck team. I think at the time was Terry Cook was driving it. Ended up with Ted Musgraves and Donnie Leah, and we were then fast forward 2 more years, and we were getting ready to go to Daytona, and got a phone call from Penske. Matt Gimbel was the crew chief of the Busch Series program at the time. And he said, hey, he goes, you interested in, I have your resume here, which I had put my resume in all those years earlier when my family had bought all the equipment. When my cousin and my uncle bought all the equipment from Roger, I was down there for a month palletizing all the parts and pieces and hauling everything back and forth. And I had given my resume to the shop foreman. And I guess it sat on a pile for 2.5 years, and just by chance, the Busch Series crew chief picked it out and gave me a call, and I signed my letter of intent to go work for Penske the day before Ryan Newman won the 50th anniversary of the Daytona 500.
Wow!
And I've been there ever since.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference from, you had your family team, and especially in late models, had some success there. You saw a little success here and there in the truck series between the family team and the team you started driving the hauler for. But what is it like? And then you went into the Cup Series there, where the goal there was really start and park, which we're really familiar with. Ryan's dad, Dave, at the end of his career, was, I think, basically almost funding Ryan's early career by doing that for like Prism Motorsports and Tommy Baldwin to a little bit of an extent, and Phil Parsons and some other folks. So we're very familiar with that world. But you go from that, where the goal is just to get to the racetrack and pick up enough money to hopefully fund some of your other endeavors, to going to working at Team Penske, an elite team. Like, what was it, just a huge culture shock for you to go from one area to another?
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, start and park was never the intent of my uncle. Wasn't that wasn't the point. We didn't want to go that route. He had the right plan in mind. And I see a lot of people, a lot of young guys, a lot of these in the truck series and the Xfinity series now, that they try and go to every race. And I don't think that's what you need to do. I think you need to pick the races that you're going to run good at, put all your eggs in the basket and run good and be up front, be on TV. And that's what's going to land you the deal. They're running 6 laps down and being in the way is going to do nothing but paint you in a bad light. But yeah, no, we did. We definitely had to bite the bullet and start in park when we did. But yeah, no, definitely I don't want to say culture shock, but the biggest change for me was, not I was driving the hauler for my family, and even when I went to Jim Harris's place, I was still a mechanic.
Yep.
And I had mechanical duties as well as hauler duties. Well, when I got to Penske, that was not the case. My sole responsibility was the hauler, and that took some getting used to. I was constantly in the way because I was trying to help on the car. Got chastised for it a couple times, and it was really a difficult transition to go from being in it to, okay, I'll just take care of the truck. And then that's when I entered my Mr. Clean phase. If my only responsibility is going to be the truck, I'm going to have the cleanest, nicest truck that I can. And it was then, I started out with Sam Hornish, and I mean, it's not, we struggled, you know what I mean? But, and then from Sam Hornish, I went to Kurt Busch, and, that was its own animal. You ran good, but there was the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean,
yeah, he was a different person back then.
Kurt was, and still is, I talk to Kurt whenever I get a chance to see him, but the greatest guy off of the racetrack. But once he puts that helmet on, something short circuits. But if you want a wheelman, he's he was your man. But he could definitely break some stuff in the truck if he wasn't happy. But but then it's weird because all the people that we like when we were with Sam, and we call my teammates that are still with me in different aspects now, those were the character building years, man. You were running 35th every week and wrecking stuff, and that's what makes you what you are. If you keep coming back for more and don't get down on yourself. I mean, I'm a two-time series champion now. I mean, I could have packed up my toys and went home years ago, but and I all my teammates from that team, there's a lot that are still with me, just in different areas of the shop and different teams now, the 2 and the 12 or 2 and the 22. And yeah, it's crazy. It's like, Jefferson said on that podcast, just when it seems like it can't get any worse, then something miraculous happens and changes the whole deal. So here we are.
Yeah. Speak to, when you talk about your time at Penske, like how you've progressed through the different teams at Penske too, because you have kind of like worked with different drivers and crew chiefs along the way, correct?
Yeah. When I first started, I started as a test team driver and Busch Series, and it was Sam. When Sam was in the 77, we also had him in a Busch car, and then it went to Justin Allgaier. Didn't spend much time on that. I mean, I spent more time testing, because back then we were testing. I lived at Kentucky. I swear I lived at Kentucky. We were there constantly. But did a couple races with Justin Allgaier in the Verizon car, and then I got moved. One of the drivers on the 77 had a falling out with the crew chief, and they just replaced him with me, and did that deal with Sam. And then was it 2011? I think we started with Kurt, and that was short lived. And then it was AJ, and we all know how that ended. Then we got Sam back again for, till we found somebody, for a couple races. And we had Dave. Dave Blaney practiced our car in New Hampshire after that all happened. And I laugh at him all the time because he got out of the car after practice. He goes, "Man, I wish Roger would let me race this car. I know he's not going to let me race." He goes, "But I wish he'd let me race this car."
That's
but
great.
After, then it was Joey. And, we had success with Kurt, with the Shell Pennzoil people. But, once Joey came, he was looking for, he knew this was his last chance, being that it was his second chance.
Yeah.
And it might be his last chance, and Todd Gordon, the Todd Gordon years, they were really good. I mean, it was so nice to know that it didn't matter what racetrack you were going to, you were going to be competitive. And that was something I never had before, even with Kurt, because, Kurt, as nice of a guy as he is, there was just sometimes he would beat himself before he ever got the chance to let the car or the racetrack beat him. But knowing that you can go somewhere with Joey and anywhere, and we won with Joey at Daytona to Watkins Glen to Martinsville. I mean, we were competitive everywhere we went, and that made going to the racetrack fun, which was, I mean, broad picture, wide angle lens, you're racing, so it's supposed to be fun, but being competitive makes it a lot more fun. And then, of course, when they did the whole switcheroo in 2020, we ended up with Ryan, and again, kid's super fast. Super fast. He you're going to be fast when you go to the super speedways. He had his struggles, Richmond and places and road courses like that, but you could see him progressing there too, man. And it's fun going to the racetrack still. I mean, hell, we sat in the pole this last weekend. I mean, it was good until it wasn't. But no,
talk a little bit about that, kind of that abrupt change. So you win a cup championship with Joey, you win the Daytona 500, solid team, and Mr. Penske decides to shake things up. And we'd gotten used to Jeremy Bolins and that crew, being with Ryan all the way through from Xfinity all the way up. So we asked some other folks, the same question, like, was it a shock initially, and then you kind of realize you're not starting over because your whole team's basically going over, but it's this guy that we've had so much success with, this driver, and then suddenly, all right, Ryan's kind of the new kid in town, especially in the Cup Series, and here we are. We have to do it because this is what we've been asked to do.
Yeah, I mean, the jury's still out. I don't want to get hung on any of this stuff, but nobody really knows what happened there, to if it was RP or if RP's hand was forced to do something. It is what it is, but it went really rough for me. Rewind to championship weekend in Las Vegas after we won with Joey. And Roger comes up to me, he goes, how about we buy you a new trailer for winning the championship? And I was, great, sir. This is great. Thank you. Because at the time we were in an old piece. I mean, still a nice trailer, just it needed to be updated. Fast forward, the year that the trailer was being built was 2019. And we were going to debut it in 2020, so I never got a chance to use my trailer that I won. It got given to somebody else, but it is what it is. showed my ass. I threw a fit, acted like a 2-year-old because somebody basically took my new toy away from me, but probably wasn't the shining spot on my resume, but I was mad. And yeah, well, it was you go through that whole range of emotion. Like, what did we do? Like, we didn't, we won a championship. 19 wasn't great, but we didn't have a terrible year.
Right.
It's like, what? Because not that you were, but it almost felt like you were being punished for something, because we didn't know Ryan was going to be what he is now. We just knew that they were taking a championship team and sending it somewhere else. I guess we got comfortable. Shame on us, right? Luckily we got to stay together as a team,
right?
But since then, since that, the team's slowly been, I don't want to say dismantled, but people have gone their separate ways. Pit crew guys, they're all still in the sport. Over the wall guys, and then the mechanics. Todd bowed out, which hurt because Todd's just a great guy, man. Ton of respect for Todd. First that was, and then Steve-O, our longest. He was part of the original. I don't want to say the longest, but there was a bunch of them that were part of the original 2 crew. You had Dave, Mule, tire guy, Stretch. They were all, and then I came in. But as we got switched to Ryan's team, they, Steve-O retired, and Stretch now is the car chief on Austin's car, and Mule and I are still together. But it just, you got to thinking, it's like, are they leaving for a reason? But we won a championship, so we got the last laugh.
Yeah, I was going to say, you talked earlier about character building moments, and it's almost like that was one, and you had to go through it a couple of times because, Todd ends up retiring too, and then they bring Jonathan in as a replacement. But now looking back on that, you see where the heights that you've risen to with Ryan now. It has to be pretty fulfilling to know that eventually you guys put your head down, accepted the change, and went to work.
Yeah, it was shame on us again. We all just expected that Miles was going to be our crew chief because Miles was our lead engineer. And when they told us Jonathan was coming, Jonathan and I started right around the same time. We had at Penske, worked together before, just not in the roles that we are now. And, none of us, I wouldn't say had a problem with it. It was just, we were expecting something different. And, but no, Jonathan's been great. Jonathan's family comes from a trucking industry. So he has a lot of respect for what I do. And I, in return, have a lot of respect for what he does. So it's been a good deal.
Now, on a race weekend, a lot of, you do get the hauler there, but you do a lot more than just drive the hauler and drive the car to the track, correct? You do end up on the pit crew in some manner too, right? You do a lot of different duties. Yeah.
Yeah. My duties have been reduced a little bit as we speak. I had orthoscopic surgery on my left shoulder over the off season. Nothing that I injured. I think it was just an old man being old and wear and tear. And so I had to take a step back from handing in the second can on pit stops. I'll get back to that here in a few weeks as my therapy progresses. But I'm throwing rear hose for Zach and I still run fuel. I'm still the fuel jockey, but typical weekend, we're there 24 hours before the team gets there, we have the garage all set up, everything unloaded except for the car. Once the garage opens, and I have the truck set up the way it needs to be, I go right to the tire pile, and I assist Mule Dave in getting the tires in sets and getting everything ready for practice and stuff like that. And practices are different, especially in the condensed form that we have now, being the little 10-minute practices we have. I still do the fuel for practice because it's not a 100-pound can of fuel. It's only a 50-pound can of fuel. So I'm able to do that. So I'll still fuel the car, change tires, torque wheels during practice, whatever they need me to do. I've been doing it long enough. I can kind of stand back there at the back of the car and see where people need help. And that's my biggest thing. I try and have stuff ready for the guys and do stuff before they realize they need it done. And yeah, during the race, I am pit support behind the wall. And then once the checkered flag falls, usually an hour after, we're ready to hit the road again.
You mentioned, your duties right now are a little bit limited just for health reasons, but did things change at all for you from the pandemic, season to now? Like I understand they kind of reduced the number of crew members that could come to the track. Did you have to pick up any extra duties in that process from back when you said your main duty was just taking care of the hauler? Did you pick anything else up, 2020 and beyond?
Yeah, the pandemic was the big change. Once they came out with the reduced roster numbers, you didn't have all that pit support. So everybody had to pick up extra duties. And that's when, I used to watch the race from the hauler. I would start preparing stuff for next week, during the race, and just get to watch it on TV. But once the pandemic hit, and we had less people at the racetrack, everybody had to step up and do a little bit more.
Now, obviously you were super busy then, but you mentioned, growing up through the sport, you're a mechanic, you liked being hands-on. Did a part of you like the fact that you had an opportunity to be kind of more, in the trenches with the team instead of taking care of just the hauler stuff on its own? Yeah.
I mean, we're racers, you want to be involved. I mean, it was just, going back to my family's team, the racing was 5 p.m. to midnight. 9 to 5, we were selling used cars. So it was always crazy doing that, because I see people, Xfinity teams and truck teams doing it now, and I know exactly how those guys feel and how tired they are and how disgusted they are. But no, it's being able to be an asset in more ways than just taking the truck and getting it there is always, it makes you feel good when that the guys have enough faith in you to say, hey, I need you to help me do this, because they know I can do it, because I've done it before.
You talk a little bit about your it's kind of like a game day mindset, and I've joked to Steve before, I've been down, on pit road to watch a few races multiple times, and I've talked to a few other guys on the crew, but I always said, Greg always looks a little intimidating to me, because you're a big, tall guy. You look like real serious about everything that's going on. I'm like he's one of the ones that I haven't gone up to ask for a fist bump or something going on during a race. But you look locked in. You're like you're a presence. I feel like on pit road.
Yeah, guilty as charged. I do take it, and they my teammates on the other teams let me know about it all the time that I take my job too seriously. But no, 6'4", 265. Yeah, I'm a big guy, but I'm a big teddy bear. It if I can fly under the radar and nobody knows I've been there all weekend, I've done my job. I'm not real flashy. I let my work ethic and my equipment speak for me. But yeah, I do. I'm kind of smug faced at the racetrack. I don't make a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of friends, but the ones I do have, I take care of, and vice versa.
Now, you said you yourself are not flashy, and you brought this up a little bit earlier, but the haulers, the trailers that you guys are driving cross country are pretty iconic, across NASCAR, across IndyCar, across sports car. The chrome or stainless sides, you guys take a lot of pride into it. Do you feel like as you're making these trips across the country, are NASCAR haulers kind of like the envy of the truck stops and other spots, or does even that get annoying sometimes if people are coming up trying to take photos and ask you how to get into the sport or how you can become a driver?
Well, yeah, everybody always asks, and it's it's part of it. I mean, being a kid growing up in northeastern Pennsylvania, and at the time, Penske Racing was in Reading, Pennsylvania. So the first, before I even knew what I was, the first race haulers I ever saw were Rogers IndyCar haulers. And then when I finally started in the truck series, we'd do double events at, say, Michigan, where the truck series would race with the Indy cars. And you walk into the garage and it looked like a damn truck show. I mean, the Penske IndyCar haulers, the hoods would be open, the doors would be open. They'd have red carpets and mirrors under the trucks. And it look like a truck show. And I mean, and I was driving my family hauler to Daytona one year, and one of the Penske haulers was in a truck stop, and I could never, my family hauler, I had the damnedest time nobody would want to wash my truck because we didn't race every race. If I raced one race, it might be a month before I went to my next race. So nobody wanted to take my business because they didn't, if they were washing my truck, they might miss out on one of their normal customers. So I was talking to this guy, one of the truck drivers, was Ryan Newman's truck, Jack. Jack was driving it. And I said, man, I said, I just want to be, I would be much, much happier if I know when I get to the racetrack, I could get my truck washed. But that, I don't have a problem getting my truck washed anymore.
No.
But she gets washed probably twice a week. But no, going, the things that people don't realize is besides the driver, the actual, Ryan Blaney race car driver, we are probably second behind fan interaction.
Yeah.
By all the people that we meet and interact with on the road from track to track. I mean, yeah, you get your silly questions. Most of the time they think you're hauling t-shirts and, oh, you got hats in there? Or, it's like, no, the car's in there. No, it's not. Let me see it. I can't let you see it. Well, you don't got it. I'm telling you, the car's up there, but I'm sorry, I can't let you in the trailer to see it. But yeah. So
we ask a lot of folks, how to get into racing, how to get into NASCAR, and this is your job's a little bit unique, and you did come up through racing. But would you recommend what you do to anybody out there that's already just driving a truck commercially, or do you think you really should kind of have that racing background to get into a position like yours?
I mean, having a racing background doesn't hurt. I mean, we're hiring right now. I mean, if anybody listening wants to go to the Team Penske website, go to the careers heading on, and you could fill out an application online. I mean, I'll put it to you this way: my co-driver Tyler, champion last year, didn't start the season with me. He didn't start until St. Louis weekend. His second trip was Sonoma, the longest trip of the year. And 6 months later, he was a Cup Series champion. But yeah, I mean, there's worse things to do. I mean, I'm guys that drive garbage trucks probably love driving a garbage truck, but I couldn't do it. It's the biggest misnomer is all we do is drive the truck. If you're going to try and get into the sport thinking that you're going to drive the truck to the racetrack and then stand around for 2 days and then get in the truck and drive again, just stay doing what you're doing. But if you have a good work ethic, self-motivated, and are willing to take a little direction, I understand it's, to get a young guy in there and train him is one thing, but the whole teach an old dog new tricks thing. I mean, you got to be able to learn the ropes. I mean, but no, I mean, it's a great, especially our place. It's a great place to work. Great atmosphere, good equipment, good people all around. I wouldn't hesitate to tell anybody to put in a resume.
One last maybe fun question for you, especially since just came off this race at Bristol Motor Speedway. And I have to imagine the dirt race there might have been the most challenging one, but what's the most challenging track to get the truck in and out of? Because especially the Bristol dirt videos from the last few years, watching you guys try to get out of the track was almost as entertaining as maybe watching the race. So what's the most challenging one to get that hauler in and out and parked?
Yeah, Bristol was intimidating in the beginning. I've done it so many times I don't even think about it now, but like I let Tyler do it for the first time and he puckered up a little bit. I don't like Dover for the simple being you go in Bristol and you go down the banking and you're done. It's done and over with. At Dover, you go in and you travel the length of the back straightaway tilted like that. And you're just sitting there. And if traffic backs up, you're sitting there for 10, 15 minutes. And it's there. A lot of them are better than what they used to be.
Well, Greg, thanks for coming on and talking to us. We definitely appreciate hearing your story. And like I said, I was excited because just reading up on your backstory and being in racing, and we just love telling everybody, letting everybody know a little bit about you, and hopefully they've learned a little bit. You've learned a little bit about us, and hopefully we can talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Come up and give a fist bump.
Yep. Next time I will.
That's nice.
That was Greg Sorber, the Team 12's hauler driver for Ryan Blaney and his number 12 Ford Mustang on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit. Well, Steve, once again, I want to thank you for setting up another great interview. I say at the top of the show that we have a series of interviews all throughout the year, and you're the guy behind that's reaching out, making the contacts, and setting them up and putting them down to come and talk to us.
We got another one next week coming up, barring any kind of technical issues. We'll be talking next week about the Ryan Blaney's Family Foundation's upcoming event.
But yeah, great to talk to Greg. Great to get some more insight from a member of the crew. I know we talked to a previous hauler driver before that's become a great friend of the show, in Justin Bosch. But we got to see his Justin's one of Greg's old buddies, old road partners out there. And like we said, see Greg at the track all the time. Great to get to know him a little bit more off the track. So thank you, everyone, once again for tuning in to this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. You can interact with us on Facebook and X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok, for now, at Team.Blaney. We also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Good night, Netherlands. Check out the TikTok for now.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.